In this video, we're going to backtest the technique I shared in part 1 of determining short-term bias. I go in depth on how to utilize this price action concept as the candles print on the chart, and how the different time frames mesh together and form a picture of what's likely to happen next. I'll explain my perspective on what makes a high probability signal and when it's less likely to play out. I'll share some ideas on how you can use this as a building block to forming a trade plan, or as a confluence for your own unique trade model. A lot of work goes into these presentations, so please hit that like button and subscribe as it really helps the channel. And now, time for the video. Hey traders, welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to do some back testing. We can click through and play these candles forward, and I'm using FXReplay, which is a very useful app. It has the trading view interface, but you can click through on any number of time frames and see the candles form on each chart at the same time, which is very nice. It doesn't skip ahead on the higher time frame if you're on the 15-minute, for example. So I've set up a pretend $100,000 account here just for fun. And in this video, I'm sure we're going to take some wins, we're going to take some losses to hopefully give me a chance to explain in more detail what I was talking about in part 1. So if you haven't seen part 1, please pause the video and go check out part 1. I'll leave a link in the description below. And if you've seen part 1, well, let's get started. So what we are looking at right now on the right, this is my higher time frame. I have the 4-hour set here right now. And on this time frame, I'm going to look for the imbalances, and I'm going to look for the raid of candle highs or candle lows inside imbalances. That is step 1, if you recall. And then we'll look for the lower time frame confirmations afterwards. So this, again, is a way of determining short-term bias, one way of determining short-term bias that I like to use. It is kind of the building blocks of a trade plan. It's not, I did say in the last video it was a standalone strategy, but not kind of out of the box. You really do need to put some boundaries onto it and understand when it's likely to be effective and when it's not. So one thing, I'm still going to try to keep an eye on just kind of overall market perspective in terms of, you know, what are we doing? Are we in a downtrend? Are we in a discount? Are we in a premium? Those kinds of things. And for instance, I can see that on a higher time frame, we're bearish. Now we have had this move from high to low, and we were kind of pulling back. And so we do have some imbalance right here, but let's just click through. I'm going to be on the 30-minute intervals. I'm going to watch the 4-hour candle high, and I'm also going to be aware of time of day because this is NASDAQ. It's better to trade this around New York session, at least in my experience. So we will just keep that in mind. You can see we keep trading through it, and now we do have a we can see that we traded and hit this gap above. And now let's go to the 30-minute chart, and we want to find our raid candle. The 30-minute chart is good middle time frame, I find, for the 4-hour as my bias time frame. And I would mark out the first candle that broke through the high. Actually, it wouldn't be that one. It would be this one right here. And so we pushed up through it here, ran the liquidity above this high into this gap, and now this is our first close below it. And so that would signal to me, okay, let's go to the 15-minute chart, and I want to see on the 15-minute chart, not necessarily this. What I want to see on the 15-minute chart, just to recap a little bit, is basically a low that gets taken out with some sort of imbalance. A pattern you're all familiar with by now, I'm sure. Meanwhile, I'm keeping an eye on the fact that this push up has crossed above this short-term high. You know, we might have a setup in the other direction as well, but let's just keep clicking forward, and we can see that we did not have a sell set up, and we are pushing through, and you can see here we have a 4-hour low. We rated it. Let's go to the 30-minute. That's the middle time frame. And you can see that we do technically get our first close here But if we go now to the 15-minute, while there is a slight structure shift here, the overall PA in this area is quite congested and choppy. And with the bullish and bearish high time frame imbalances right near each other, I would want to avoid this. So again, we're just in this overall sideways consolidation. I'm going to just kind of keep clicking and see if we get anything interesting. Okay, so now we've come back down. We do have this low down here that just got hit into this gap. So we could just see what we get here on the 30-minute. Now the 30-minute raid candle would be all the way up here. So this is just kind of a choppy market. There's no reason to kind of get involved. Okay, now we do get a nice impulsive move above this raid candle. We can look to the 15-minute and see that we also have this imbalance down here. This is kind of like a breaker here. So we are in the afternoon session in New York. We could draw a fib from low to high, okay? And we could set our fib maybe at the 618. It lines up with the imbalance. And maybe we want to aim for this for 3R. Again, this is just for fun. We're not really formally backtesting this as a strategy, just to show kind of how you might want to think about this concept. And short term now, we would have good reason to be bullish. And maybe there's a setup. Maybe, again, this isn't your setup, but maybe you trade something else on the 5-minute or the 1-minute, maybe a 5-minute fair value gap here. If you're a scalper, you can see we get continuation up, and now we are looking like we're going to that high. So at this point, I don't really see a point in keeping this order on because now we're heading into the next session. And overall price is still pretty consolidated, and now we are going lower, deeper into this imbalance. Looks like it's just going to keep continuing lower. Now we've closed in this bullish gap and we've created bearish gap. So now if we create a bearish setup, so now we have a 4-hour high that's formed, candle high. So on the 4-hour, we've wicked above this candle high into this imbalance. And now we go to our 30-minute chart, our middle time frame, and we want to see if we get a close below that raid candle. We do there, just barely though. It's just not, that's not what I'm looking for yet. But let's see if we get another 30-minute close. Now we get a nicer close. So now this is more interesting to me. We can see that we have this up close candle, trade below it, order block, and now we've created a new order block. So this could be a propulsion candle. And while normally I would want to see an imbalance here, the propulsion block is an entry technique that I really like a lot. If you want to know more about it, it's part of the ICT core content. And I find it to be a pretty effective entry technique, even when you don't get that imbalance. And so maybe let's trade it down to this level here. If you haven't used FXReplay, all you do is you click on the risk to reward tool, you go to place order, and you can choose 1% or whatever you want to risk for the sake of the exercise. And we will do 1%. And here we do eventually get the imbalance anyway. So I'm curious if we're going to even just sell off from here. Now we come back up, push through, sell off again. And now here we go. So now we've made a lower low. So in this situation, you know, I'm not refining a strategy, but maybe you want to take something off the trade. Let's just keep it open. I don't know. Comes up again, or just sort of sideways. Again, this is before New York Stock Exchange opens, so I'm not really, there we go. Okay, so we do get the move down to our target. But the point being is that once we get this candle rate in the gap and we get the middle time frame close below and we see a 15-minute imbalance, we can have a bearish view heading into the next period of time until we kind of get hit some liquidity or form a higher time frame setup in a bullish higher time frame setup of the same sort of sequence. So I'll show you, see if I take a loss, you'll see it. Usually it's because there's a opposing setup that is taking place on a higher time frame. So hopefully we get one of those opportunities today. So here we go now on the 4-hour. We've now made a lower low. So we could have taken a partial and then kept a runner, maybe aiming towards these lows. Let's go switch back to the 30-minute. Okay, now we've hit the lows and now we've popped back up. And again, this kind of concept can be applied on all time frames. So if you don't see anything on the 4 hour for a while, maybe you want to switch to a 1 hour. Maybe you want to look at a daily or a weekly and just see where you're at. Okay, so here we have wicked above this 4 hour high into an imbalance. We've been trending down, but we did just hit this big high time frame area of liquidity. So I'm really not seeing this as a trade that I would want to take, but we can just kind of take a look at it and see what we get. We do get this wick, and then we close below it. So this is our raid candle. We close below it, and then on the 15-minute, there's no, wow, there's kind of an imbalance right here. So, okay, let's just go for it. It's not really what I would go for, I think, because we're at the lows. So let's be very aggressive in how we manage it, I guess. 15-minute. We are also in London. And now, again, we can see now that what I was talking about, we've created, if you look here, we've come down, we've created this inside bar, and we tried to push up, and then we tried to push down, and now we wick below this candle's low. So anything below here could be just a liquidity grab. Everyone thinks this is going to keep going lower because we've been bearish, but we did hit that higher time frame liquidity. So let's see what we're going to get. Probably going to get a loss. And there we go. No surprises there. But let's just keep playing it out. So you still kind of have to use more like just general common sense with respect to what's going on. This is like a shortcut for bias. That doesn't mean you can exclude other common sense techniques that you might otherwise use. So, okay, now here we go. Now we're pushing up. Now we are heading into a premium area here from this high to this low. But again, I'm not going to be surprised if it just keeps rallying because of the higher time frame liquidity. But you can see we have a gap here and we have a gap here. So let's just see. Yes, we're above this candle high, but I might want to see it kind of base since we have a lot of momentum. I might want to see a more recent 4 hour high get rated. Okay, so here we're just continuing to push up. And it makes me wonder if I'm going on to the weekly chart, let's say. Okay, so you can see here on the weekly chart why this is happening. Not why, but one reason why this might be happening. You can see on the weekly chart that we have a imbalance right here. It's the same kind of thing happening out on a higher time frame. We have this imbalance here, and now we have a raid of this candle low, weekly candle low into this imbalance. And so when that happens, usually the first kind of target or areas, if you take a middle time frame, let's say the daily chart, price is going to at least try to get above this raid candle. So maybe here, maybe it wicks it and maybe hits this one. You notice we have a daily imbalance up here. So just something to keep in mind if you're just kind of in tunnel vision on the 4 hour, you might miss a lot of other things that are happening. Let's go this now too. I'm trying not to make too much in this video because it is a bit tedious to do this even in backtesting, but normally you have a lot of time to think about it throughout the day, throughout the week. And now I'm kind of compressing all that into a short video. So let's see, now we do have a raid technically of this candle's high, 4 hour high into an imbalance. This candle right here would be our raid candle. Let's see if we close below it. We're coming for it. We wick it. Okay, so this is the level I'm looking at. This is the raid candle. See if we close below it. We do, but it's still an inside bar to the previous one. I'm not going to use that. Okay, now we do have a close below it. But remember what I said about the fact that we're in a weekly area and we might try to see a push to this daily level. So I am not super confident in this. Let's just see what happens. And you can see we do get a push. And now look, Off of that weekly, look, we've created a new gap to the upside on the 4-hour. And so now we have, again, this daily candle. This would be our daily raid candle. So we do feel like this could be our target. And so now we have a raid of the candle low, 4-hour candle low, 4-hour gap. And now on the 30-minute, let's see if we even get a nice close, very impulsive close. See the difference between a close above this raid candle or this raid candle. This would be our, it's getting a little messy now, I apologize. But let's use this as our raid candle here. Very much more convincing than what we saw here below this one to the downside. And we have this little breaker and this order block, let's say. And so now we could maybe just take a trade. Let's put our stop there. And now we could target that daily high that we were talking about and set our order. Let's go down to the 15-minute now and see if we even get a pullback. We do. We do get a push up. So again, nice reaction. You could take a partial. You could be finding scalps on the lower time frame. And now I think the day's close to over, but let's just see if this works its way up towards that. I have a feeling it will. There it's going. So by now, you've taken up this high. We could take a partial. Let me just show you how to take a partial in FXReplay. So if you want to take a partial, you just kind of click the close, but you're not going to, it doesn't actually close your position. It just brings up this box right here. And I could choose, let's take 50% off, and I press save. And now when I click the next candle, it's going to take 50% off. It does look like it closed, but it didn't. Now if I see, now it's back with the remaining portion. And by the way, in this bottom right, I can keep tabs on how I'm doing. And if I want to move to break even, I can just click stop loss or this right there and see how it automatically moves me to break even. So it's pretty nice way of doing it. And now let's see if it takes me out. So that's fine. We didn't even make it up to that daily candle yet. So what this means is on the weekly chart, let's see. We're still pretty bearish and we don't have any gaps here. I'm just curious on the monthly chart. We do have this. So look how on the previous month, let's get rid of everything. Previous month low, this month respected the gap. And now this month looks like at this point, like it's not, but it could still close with the big wick. And so you could have this and you could just sort of see, okay, we're February. And you might want to see a weekly raid candle get targeted. But anyway, let's just go to the 4-hour and click through again on the 4-hour. I just noticed this that I missed out on. There's probably, let's see. Yeah, see, there was a setup on the 8-hour. It's so hard to do this in backtesting because I don't really have time to really reflect on it like I would. But here we have an 8-hour candle raid of a high into an imbalance. And then you might want to look at like a 2-hour chart. Oh, see, this is beautiful. This is great. This is how I love it for it to look, is when you have rejection candle right here and then immediate close below that raid candle. And then, you could go and see that even on this time frame, you get this gap right here. You don't even have to go to the 1 hour, but you could. And breaker taking above this high. So this is really, really fantastic right here. That's why this sold off like that. Not why, but you can see what I'm trying to get that point across, that like you just can't be in tunnel vision on every gap on every 4-hour, or, you can, but you might get a little bit of a reaction like you do. So you wick in, you take the low, you're in this gap, you do get a little bit of a bounce. We got a profitable trade off of it. But if you're just like taking this trade and expecting the short-term bias to be the high time frame bias, you're going to be surprised, get a rude awakening, because sometimes you will have the opposing setup happening right above it on a higher time frame. And so the 8-hour we would value more than the 4-hour. as our bias. So let's continue on. Let's go to the 4 hour again. So usually as a check, you might want to check out the higher time frame right before you take a trade, let's say, or set up a trade in backtesting. I would probably want to look at the 8 hour or the daily just as one final check. Now we are pushing back up. Let's see if we get more into a premium. We are in that monthly area of support. So now we've completely closed up this gap pretty impulsively. And let's see if we get, we did respect this gap a little bit. So let's just see if we do get a little bit of a poke above. Now we do have a gap below. So again, in this type of environment, I might want to just sit on my hands. We're not even in the session. So let's keep going. Sorry if this is kind of all over the place, but didn't have a clear plan here. So now we got another raid. Now let's see, are we in closer to our session? Not really. We did get a close. We did build a gap, but again, not super into it. Okay, so you did get a very nice move. This could have been a trade, but if this were New York, it would have been interesting, but kind of like in no man's land time-wise, I feel like. But you can see without even going to the 15-minute chart, you can see that we got a close above the raid candle. We've seen a lot of momentum off the lows. We've created this bullish imbalance here. And on the 15-minute, I bet, again, yep. So we take out this short-term high, create an imbalance, price comes back into the gap. You know, this could be the entry. Targeting buy-side liquidity. Let's keep clicking. There we go. Next session, we are in New York session. We come back down into that same fair value gap and rally higher. And now what are we doing here? I'll just do a little bit more. I'm not going to do like, this is just kind of an informal session. Now I think we're in the next week. So you can see the days here where when I move my cursor, it'll show you what day we're in and also at the bottom. So yeah, now we're in the new week. And I'm actually curious how the monthly close yet? We're still in February. One more week of February. So we're keeping an eye on, this is the candle raid for the weekly. So we've spiked the high. Now we've come down to spike the low. We have a gap. So let's just press forward until we get new price action. But again, you can see we take the low, we fill the gap, we close above the middle raid candle, but I just didn't want to deal with this because of this gap. And then we continue higher. Now I think we're in March, so the monthly has closed. And you can see what I mean. We've respected this gap. It's still respecting it. We can wick way down through it, but as long as we close with a wick, long wick, as long as the body doesn't close through the gap, this is still valid in my eyes. So we've taken a low, prior candle low inside a gap on this time frame. And now I would look for, and we've already hit it. So we've hit this weekly raid candle. And the next thing I would want to see is do we get a close above it or not on a weekly basis? Because a lot of times you will see some sensitivity around the raid candle high. In this kind of environment, you'll see a lot of sensitivity maybe for a couple of candles, or maybe you won't. Maybe it'll blast through it, but that is important information when you're talking about bias. So let's continue forward. On the 4-hour chart. On the 4-hour chart now, again, we're kind of in a risky area because we could be just sensitive of this high and then come down, but we do have a little gap right here. I'm going to get rid of it so it doesn't muddy up the chart, but you can see this gap right here. Do have a raid, but I might want to see if we get I like to use this one because it's the more recent candle. Now I'm looking at the 30-minute. And it's a little messy, so I'm probably not going to. Looking for that high to be closed above. Not really going to get it. Okay. This is ugly. It's just consolidation. Let's just avoid this. This is just very unclear. We do get the move higher. And now we are, and I think we're in the next week now. So what did the weekly close at? Not yet. Hasn't closed yet, has it? No, not yet. Okay, sorry guys. I'm just kind of doing this very fast. Okay, but look. Same idea, raid of candle low. We get above it. Let's just make it clean. Sorry guys. We'll look back at that weekly in a second. So we have our raid of the low. We also have this would be our raid candle. See, this is what I want to show you too. You get a lot of sensitivity on the raid candle. Sometimes it'll just do this and then it will drop off. That's why I like that middle time frame. And here we go. Then we get the bullishness to the upside, and we could look for a setup down here. It is becoming New York Open. No, so let's take a look. We are hitting these highs. So now we have an imbalance here. So let's just see what happens on the 15-minute chart. It's too bad that this rallied away so much because I feel like the trade is not really valid anymore. Let's just, for the hell of it, see if I can take my time here a little bit. Okay, so now we have a daily gap on the daily chart. We're moving down. Did we close that weekly yet? I don't think so. So we haven't confirmed this yet. This could still be a wick on the weekly chart. So on the daily, we're still bearish overall, and we have this gap right here. And now we have this raid. And so we could look at that as since the daily is, let's see if we even got a close below anything. No, so we have not gotten a close below. We would want to use the 4 hour, so we would want to see a close below here. So our invalidation level on that bullish setup is what could be our confirmation level on the daily gap level. Sorry if this is getting confusing. It's really not that confusing when you do it and when you practice with it and when you are not rushing like I'm kind of doing right now. So let's see. I don't think I want to take this buy because we're hitting this higher time frame, and you can see. So again, this is where technically you have maybe the setup, but this is what I was trying to say in that video before, that when it doesn't work, it's because the higher time frame, the daily, has a bearish setup kind of right here. So we've wicked this candle high into an imbalance. And now let's go and we can just kind of map the market this way. So 4 hour, this was our raid candle because this was the first candle that probed above it. And now, have we closed yet? We have to wait for this 4 hour candle to close, to be honest, to know for sure what's going on. Unless you want to use a 2 hour. I should do it actually. So I should keep this simple. So the higher time frame is always going to be, the bias time frame is always going to be on the right chart. Now let's look at the 2 hour. So we do have a 2 hour close. You might want to use the 4 hour close, but as the middle time frame. But let's say for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll use the 2 hour close. And then let's say a 60-minute chart. We can see we have a break of this breaker here. So let's just take a trade right here and stop above. Seems a little extreme, but let's just do it. The high. And let's see what we get. What time of day are we? kind of out of session again, but maybe you're a swing trader. We're in. Do get a little rejection here. Okay, so here you can see we've taken out a short-term low, the first low, so that could be profit. You could use the break. I went with a very conservative stop here, but maybe you want to go just over the breaker again, or above the bodies. Sometimes I might do that. This is what I mean, where it's like you got to kind of figure out what makes sense. But or maybe you don't want to do this at all. Maybe you just, again, a scalper on the 5-minute, and you want to use this breaker and look. Let's see, consolidate. Let's say 5-minute. Maybe this will be a little bit cleaner. Yeah, okay. So maybe there would have been divergence here. We see we've come up into this imbalance with the breaker on the higher time frame. So this is an idea where maybe you could use the bias I'm explaining from the daily and the candle rate into the gap, and then you see, okay, so this is becomes a POI for you, the 1 hour POI that you now look for the 5-minute entry. You have a system where you want to see maybe S&P had it cleaner with some divergence, but you can see we've gone above these candle bodies here. We've come down, created this gap. You know, I don't know what your system might be, but there's other ways to kind of look at this. For now, let's see. Again, we could take a partial here from this trade, or you could reduce our risk, and we could just see what we get in terms of a close. We're going to come back up. It's the end of the day, and like a very nice continuation. Let's protect our position, see if we get to target. And probably not. Are we going to go? Let's see where we're at here the next day. This is kind of just a random target that I didn't even put much thought into. Oh, I did see these candle bodies right here, so maybe that was what I was thinking. And there we almost go. There we go. Okay, great. So I think I'll leave it at that. This is kind of exhausting for me to make to do this video, but I just wanted to kind of give you some examples and show how this concept kind of plays and how you kind of need to kind of examine a few different time frames together when you're trading it, and not just have tunnel vision on one time frame. As much as we'd all like to do that, I mean, you can do that, but I just think it's not the best way to utilize this. It's good to have a holistic view of this. This is a fractal that plays out all the time in both directions, to the upside, to the downside, and you want to see, where is it confirming it? Where is it not confirming it? Where are we getting the impulse? Where's the raid candle being closed above or below aggressively? Where is it wicking it and showing that resistance to it? Those are all important clues. If you recall, we were watching that higher time frame, and we never confirmed. Let's just highlight this. Forgot to come back to it, but we never confirmed the close above. So we had the monthly. So this is, again, the fractal playing out on the higher time frame, rate of a candle low inside an imbalance. And then we want to see the next step that we would be looking for if we were to shift bullish on the short term relative to these high time frames. So it's kind of a misleading thing when I say short term. I guess it's really, I'm not trying to be misleading, but relative to the time frame you see it, to the next few candles or so. And so we get the push up towards the raid candles high. We try to close above it, but we reject it. So we're still bearish. We can still have a view of bearishness. And that is, and then of course we had the daily playing out. So the daily was a confirmed setup. Okay. The monthly, weekly did not confirm with the close above. So until you get that close above, you have to keep an open mind that this could be a wick. This week could be a wick, as it was. Okay. It doesn't, just because it's above it here, doesn't mean it's going to close that way. And instead, the bears were still in control, and we had, again, in a premium area, this gap, this rate of this high, and then just to tie it all together, the close above the 240 close below the red candle, but also again the 2-hour close, which I used for this video. So 2 hour or 4 hour is kind of good middle time frame for the daily chart. That's your daily bias. And then on the 1 hour, you can see we had the breaker, we have the fair value gap, and sort of the textbook entry. And then we take profit again. There's a daily level here, 3 to 1, 3 to 3, 3.3 with the wide stop. Could have been a little bit better. Or actually, it was originally more like 3. Could have been here, could have been above the breaker to get really nice R. You could have trailed, you could have taken partials along the way. Or you could have looked for, like we said, a different type of setup, whatever system you like to trade, but utilizing this as a framework for bias. So hopefully this was informative, and be sure to test this out on your own. Hope this was helpful, and hope you all have a great day. Take care.